Welcome back to the Brothers War EDH. My name is Ryan. I'm joined here by Chris and Blake. It's been a little bit, guys. Haven't been able to get an episode out in a little bit. January was kind of hectic. A lot of scheduling issues. Just stuff happened. It's just life. You know what I mean?
Life happens.
Life happens, and that's okay.
Life happens, you jabronis.
Yeah, that's really all it is, and that's perfectly fine. But we're here. It's the first podcast episode of 2024, and I just wanted to start off by just giving y'all a couple of things that has happened since our last podcast. If you didn't know, we hit that 1,000 subs on YouTube. Very thankful for y'all in that regard for subbing to the channel. All the comments and the likes and everything. We wouldn't be here without y'all, and we really appreciate y'all supporting that. I don't think that we've talked about this yet, but we're now over 1,000 TikTok followers. So nice. We are, we're slowly popping off in these areas. I'm very, very happy of the progress that we've made in these. A lot of people on TikTok, they really like the talks that we have regarding this podcast. So thank you for everyone that has been on this road with us so far. We also have a pretty substantial announcement for the channel as well. It is in regards to the direction of the type of, I guess, genre of content that we're going to be getting into more often than not. And that is, we are transitioning more into a fringe cEDH / cEDH realm.
I would say full-on blown cEDH too, all the way up to the top.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be like a conglomerate of like those two. You might be seeing a lot more of meta cEDH decks on here. We are
off
going
meta too.
Yeah. Meta off meta.
Not even any meta.
Yeah, it's
just
really,
whatever we feel like we want to build, right. But just to the tip top.
It's really just trying to play at some of the highest power that we can with the decks that we have. Me personally, I'm more interested in the fringe. Meta decks are cool, but I like being able to take a deck and then pushing it to its limits. Whether it be some commander that has no reason being as powerful as it is, and it might look a little bit like, oh well, you're probably just gonna throw all the best cards in there as you can, but that's not really the case. It's more like with the commander that I have, how can I be able to make it to where I can do the best that I can and try to win with the deck. So we're going in that direction.
Just be able to stay, on par with the power level of cEDH at the same time. Like you can bring a pile of cards,
wherever.
But if you're running, commander spheres, obviously that's not going to be considered cEDH.
Sure.
It's no surprise that the content that we put out usually targets a higher power to cEDH mindset anyways. So we felt like, our audience has kind of simmered down to, sort of that high power, min-max kind of, content. So, we kind of catered a little bit more to the higher power cEDH mindset. So that's why we're kind of finally settling on some sort of direction for the channel to moving forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Being able to kind of like focus in a little more on this road will help us to also have other kinds of content that also fit this road. So everything is pretty much going to be on the same pace. It's not going to be too much more probably not too much more the casual type of Magic going forward. And that might change. You never know. We might decide that it might not be for us if it's not, and we might go back. But currently, we thought about this a lot, and this is the direction that we're going. So expect to see a lot more cEDH, higher power games. The next gameplay that we have is going to be along this realm, and it's going to be for the Merge at Karlov Manor. That's what it's called. I keep on thinking it's like a bunch of different names, but yeah, Merge at Karlov Manor is going to be the first game that we're going to start doing this with.
Should be coming out this Friday through next Monday, sometime over the release weekend into the next week.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Looking forward to doing all of this. But before we get into our topic for today, I just want to ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. As always, y'all got us to 1,000. Hopefully we can be able to continue this road and continue to put out this content for y'all. Like the video, comment on the video. This one is going to be a very the topic that we have for today is going to be more in line with the announcement that we just made. So we're going to be going into that. But yeah, like, share, comment. We have our Discord in the description as well. Also, too, the soldiers are still there. We still got our Patreon. We still got the boys doing the work.
Yep.
We haven't forgotten about y'all. And hopefully going forward we'll be able to have more thoughts on our Patreon for some better perks for y'all. So we're going to be focusing a lot on those things.
Yeah. This year, especially since we're monetized now, we're going to be focusing more on, what we could do for you guys. Y'all are the ones who got us to this point. So, maybe figuring out some sort of patron tiers where we can give back. We're thinking about maybe some mats, some sleeves, some other ideas. So if you have any ideas, hit us up. So yeah.
It's gonna be good. But we got all that. Obviously follow us on TikTok if you're on TikTok. All of those things. And now it's time to get into the topic for today. And the topic for today, like I said, it's going to be in line with our announcement. We're going more fringe / cEDH, that realm. And the topic is the difference between high power and cEDH. In preparation for this, because I know that there is a lot more differences, I think, than what people might say, and there's more to high power being that like really good middle ground between like casual and.
When you think about it, there's also a lot of similarities between the two. So we'll kind of sparse out the difference between them, because that's the reason why people are like, oh, this is high power, this is cEDH, but really,
right.
They don't know what that line is. So we're kind of here to, we don't have all the information, but we can go from our experience what we feel is the difference between the two.
Right. So I just wanted to start off in preparation for this. I was combing through a lot of different websites or like Reddit posts to see what a good definition of like high power is, because cEDH is pretty much you're trying to win at all costs. You're trying to play. Your deck is designed to get to your win and then present the win. And sometimes it doesn't need to be as fast, but like what we've talked about before, speed is something where it's like you want to get to your plan as fast as you can, and you want to win. Some cEDH decks are not meant to like just go crazy and win almost like immediately. Like some the meta changes a lot. Like I know that stacks and like decks that slow down the game have kind of been rotating out for a while. But those elements are still in there. There's still stacks decks out there, and there's still things that can cause games to go a lot longer, and they don't end as fast as what a lot of people might think. So
it's more like stacks, and those slower game plans are kind of evolving into a more proactive stacks. Instead of laying down like these hard stacks pieces, it's more of like, this stacks piece not only stops my opponents, but it also progresses me forward to my win. It doesn't just hard stop people, including yourself's win attempts anymore. It's more of like a progression of your own game plan as well.
Going into this definition that I found of high power, which I thought was interesting. So high power, this one Reddit user said, it denotes playing powerful cards and strategies without adopting the cEDH mindset of win as much as possible, as fast as possible. And I thought that this was good, because if you were to take out the mindset of like cEDH and then you just had the pile of cards, you probably have this objective pile of cards that are good, but there's probably a lot of things in the deck that are not revolved around, okay, well, I'm trying to get to my win as fast as I can, as efficiently as I can. So I thought that was like a really good definition. of high power. But I think that this is something that can really help to distinguish the two because, like what Chris was saying, it's not just a pile of like really strong cards. Because in a lot of those like cEDH cards, like you're playing cards that probably have no business being in there, but in the right decks, they can really help you get to your win or your game plan a lot faster than normal. So they might, every single one might not be objectively powerful on their own, but the entire deck together creates this this deck to where you're trying to get to where you can as fast as you can, as efficiently as you can. So but I want to ask y'all, what do y'all think about this definition of high power? Do you think that that there's some things that can be brought up before we get into more the like nitty gritty between the two?
I think that this definition is fine. I think that I think there's a little bit off with it though, because if you take a cEDH deck with 25, 27 lands and you play with it without that mindset, and you don't really have the game plan, which the game plan like all goes towards one strategy. You're just kind of playing the cards. I just don't think that it's going to be it's not going to work as well as you think it is. You're not going to mulligan as aggressively as you need to. You're going to probably miss land drops when you don't, have the cards to support your strategy in your hand. I think that the cEDH decks have to come with that cEDH mindset, especially when you get to the tip top, because these are all finely tuned down to the, like, after you get to a certain point, you are playing to that cEDH mindset. You're not playing to the deck anymore. Granted, the lower quality cards that you have, when you go to like 2 or 1 color deck, you can probably do that high power definition. But when you get to like the 5 color decks and the 4 color decks, where each card's card quality is so high and they have a specific kind of function for the deck, I think you have to bring that cEDH mindset into it. So I think it's right and wrong at the same time. The wrong part about it is taking that the high card quality and the min max of like the land count and like the mana rocks and stuff like that. And if you're not having that mindset, then you're just kind of keeping a playable hand of 7, which by themselves may not have very good synergies with each other because they're just high quality cards. But when you play with the cEDH mindset, each card has a specific function for the deck.
So you're saying just the cards without the mindset is like not even high power? Is that what you're saying? You're just playing?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not going to go well for you because you're not going to mulligan aggressively enough to be able to have keepable hands that are playable, depending on what kind of commander you're using. And then they're just not going to. I personally don't think that they're not going to function as well as you might want them to. Than if you were to have more of a synergistic, slower deck that can be able to drop lands every turn.
The mindset goes for like pretty much everything, and that the cards are like kind of like a secondary thing. You can because we talked about playing lower power stuff with.
I think they go hand in hand.
Mindset. So okay, so
I don't think that you can separate them whenever they get when you have a top tier function, or when you have a top tier deck. I think that you have to have the cEDH mindset, or else the deck is kind of going to be very hit or miss. You're not going to be able to consistently have the correct hands for the situations all the time, and it could turn out bad for you because you're playing a deck with 25 lands in it, and you're keeping some bad hands because you don't know exactly how the deck functions and how it's supposed to pivot and stuff like that.
High power cards with a casual mindset, you think is not even. It's not gonna do them any good because their deck is structured to be stronger than normal, but they don't know how to play it, and they're not getting the most out of it. Because yes. It's like we're trying to like distinguish between high power, like what's high power, and like if I wanted to go and play high power with my friends, and we all wanted to play high power, like what kind of decks do we or what kind of decks should we have for high power, and then what kind of decks should we have for cEDH? But it's more like the mindset between the two. Like you should have, it's like, because what's like a high power mindset then? That's I don't even think that like that's even a thing, because really it's like you're either trying to do cEDH or you're trying to do like casual stuff. But if you have a deck that's like really good and you go in it with like a casual mindset, are you even playing high power? I guess is what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, I think the way this like definition reads is the whole like actual like casual mindset where you want everyone at the table to have a good time and do their thing. That's how this reads to me. Where that's the difference between your cEDH deck with that mindset versus the normal cEDH mindset of just trying to win and doing whatever it takes to win, even if no one plays a single card and you win on turn 0. You know, that was ultimately the goal. I don't care what kind of game state or interaction they had. I think that's really what this is trying to get at.
Okay.
Because you could play cEDH with your casual mindset, but then you would just be sitting on your combos and waiting for other people to do things, and those two things are not really. They're like like oil and water. They don't really mix. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and delay your combo because your other opponents haven't done the things that they were going to do yet. So
that's actually really interesting because when you think about like casual, even going up to high power, you're probably not as concerned about the other players, and that's where we think that a lot of people don't play enough interaction in like casual, low, mid, even like high power. And then when you go into cEDH, it's like okay, well, I'm trying to win, but I also need to stop these other people from winning, and anyone can win at like almost any given second. You have your windows that you're trying to find, whereas in maybe like high power, going down all the way to like it's like battle cruiser, it's all about like, okay, well, I want to play my stuff and let my deck do what it's doing instead and like it doesn't matter what like they're doing. I'm trying to get to what I'm trying to do. So that's
think of like the Johnny mindset where you're trying to like I might have a high powered deck, but I mostly am just interested in building my Rube Goldberg machine that draws cards and removes the board and that sort of thing. But ultimately, that's not what cEDH is about. It's about quickly and efficiently getting to a win, not watching your machine do its thing. I think that can also be a difference between cEDH and high power.
That's probably like one of the best distinguished things I've heard about this. That actually kind of makes it a little more clear cut. If someone were to ask, that actually might be the best definition I've heard. So, forget this definition. We're going with that one. So some things that I have in my notes right here. A couple of categories that I thought would be helpful to go into is for one, I want to start off with the pacing of the two, and kind of like that definition that you gave kind of helps to to kind of like lead the way into these. So when I think about high power pacing, it's like okay, well, we're playing efficient cards, we're playing good cards, but I probably don't have to worry too much about what other people are doing until like later on in the turns, maybe like maybe as low as turn like 6, and then past that, it could probably get to a point where things are starting to get a little bit gummed until or else someone like comes out with like a combo and wins or stuff like that. But like the initial focus is not like, okay, well, the speed of my deck is probably not as strong as like cEDH, but also too, the players at the table are like all trying to get their game plan going, and you kind of have a little bit of like a breathing room to where you're not like, okay, well, I can play my cards, but maybe I don't need to wait to hold interaction as much because other players might not be trying to get to like a singular linear combo or such, and just like blindside me or something like that, which is what you kind of deal with in like cEDH. So I figured that like pacing would be a really good thing. It is like a bit slower. You're still playing, you're still playing strong cards, and this also isn't to say that like someone could come out the gates and be like, oh yeah, like high power, you still have like mana crypts, chrome moxes, like all the moxen, you're trying to get these things going, but they might be on a strategy that's like, okay, well, I want to play all these cards, and then I want to like grind out the game and do like an aristocrat strategy or something like that. It's like the strategies, which we'll get into. That's another topic that I had, but maybe the strategies are more like kind of like what Blake was saying, where you're trying to get the machine, the engine going that can like go throughout the game and then eventually get to your win, but it's not as fast as it is in like cEDH. So
yeah, not as fast or not as efficient. You could be a very extremely fast deck, but if your goal is to swing with combat damage, that's obviously not going to be considered cEDH most of the time. You can run like all your fast mana, but if you have 0 tutors, your efficiency goes way down and your consistency goes way down. And we've talked about this in the past. When you have, when your deck is not, when you take tutors out of your deck becomes less consistent. And so that alone drops the power level of your deck from cEDH to high power. And you can still have all these high quality cards, except if you're not able to present that pacing at a reasonable rate compared to cEDH, then you can consider that more high power.
I was thinking too about like the mindsets that people have going into like high power versus cEDH, and this is why it's important for everybody to be on the same page as far as if we're actually playing high power or cEDH, because what's so great about cEDH is that it's like what we've said before. You have the expectations all set that like we're all trying to win, we're all trying to get our game plans going. Anybody can win at any time. The cards, it's like you're playing your deck to win. So as long as it's within the confines of like outside the ban list, it doesn't really matter what you're really playing, and therefore it's like, okay, well, you have that best experience because that no matter what comes, we're all going into it with this mindset. And then with like high power, if everyone's like, okay, well, we're not our decks are really good, but we're also playing strategies that might not be as strong or as powerful, but the consistency and the efficiency of the deck can still be there.
Yeah.
The problem that like I think a lot of people face right now is when you have someone that wants to whether they're like lying about their like cEDH deck going into a high power game, then like what Blake said in the last podcast, you're going in with like unequal expectations or decks, and then from the get-go it's almost as if it's like, okay, well, this guy's deck is stronger than ours, so like it's like automatically it goes from like I gotta worry about everybody to, okay, let's focus in on this one person. And then the games get to a point to where it's like, okay, well, okay, you took that guy out, but then you go back to what y'all are doing. It's like, okay, now I got to worry about like these two. And then if that player happened to actually win consistently without the high power players dealing with them, it's just not good. So like every single person's deck and every single person's mindset needs to be as close as you can, or the game experience, it's just not going to be good. And like, this isn't even counting the problem with like people bringing some like cEDH deck into like a mid power or even like a low power, and like, just, going back to the whole pub stomping thing, like, this is a big problem that I think that a lot of people don't really talk about, but they try to resolve. But, that's why I think that like cEDH is the closest thing to having everybody on the same level, because literally all of the expectations are the same. Whether you bring a deck that probably has no reason to go into that kind of game, or or you're bringing the best deck, everyone's like, okay, well, we're here to win. If you can, that's great. If not, let's just move on.
Only other thing to talk about is like there are some strategies that are just never going to be conducive to like cEDH. So unless they print like very like drastically changing cards for those archetypes. So like for example, one thing you'll see in high power that you basically don't see a lot in cEDH is like aristocrats, because it's not that it's not powerful, it's too slow. Because doing the sacrifice thing over and over again and draining people for 1 or 2 health every single thing that dies, while potentially powerful, takes too long and allows people to interact over a too long of a period of time. So that's why you don't see that sort of thing. That's why you see a lot of Demonic Consultation, Thoughts as Oracle, Walking Ballista Infinite combos, that sort of thing. Because once you've set that up, the game is immediately over. It's not, now I need to sacrifice 20 creatures and I've won.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
I've
man.
won.
I've won. That's actually a really good segue into that I had for this, which was the strategies. Difference between high power and cEDH. There's strategies that, unless they like really focused in to get on the same level as strategies in like cEDH, it's gonna be hard for you. They're just hard to even consider for like the best of the best decks. And it comes down to like, okay, well, you have, I'll even go as far as just like attacking, because most decks that win through combat, it's not even through just like sending creatures in continuously throughout the game. There might be some decks like that, but normally it's like, okay, well, like you have like Najila, using creatures to get infinite combat steps. You have like Godo, you're creating infinite Godos. You have
even Winota.
Yeah. Winota is actually probably the best example of like attacking without infinites, because literally you're snowballing all your creatures on the battlefield, and eventually they're all just going to get through. And they call it, a lot of people play like those like stacksy creatures in that deck to where they can't really interact with what you got, and then you just go through your turns and they can't do anything, and then you just win through combat like that, while also you're not really just playing just like one creature a turn. You're like, okay, well, Winota can be able to get like a lot of creatures out very, very quickly, slow the game down, for free. So attacking has to be like really good like that, and right now attacking is not really something that people consider for cEDH. Another good example, like what Blake was saying, aristocrats. There's a lot of setup when it comes to those, and then like we said, by the time
the Goldberg machine.
Right. It's like by the time you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna ping y'all for 1 and 2. Someone's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna just heat shimmer a freaking dual caster made you, and then you're just gone. So it's like those are the kinds of things when it comes to those strategies where you're trying to like set up a lot of cards together. It's just too slow. So when you're considering high power versus cEDH. In high power, you can definitely get away with all that stuff, and it is fun being able to play off the wall strategies. I mean, shoot, I'll even give you one of my favorites, like Mill, for example. What's cool about Mill is that there's some setup with Mill that can still make it kind of like cEDH. Now, obviously you have like the Underworld Breach, a Brain Freeze combo. It's like one of the most popular combos. But even stuff like I've seen decks have infinite ETBs, and then they have like an Altar of the Brood on the battlefield. So it's like it could be used as a win con in cEDH. It might not be as like strong as some other ones, but I would feel that one's like right in between to where you can still play those, but you play that in like high power, and like the world's your freaking oyster. Like you can do a lot of stuff with Mill in like high power. I would say like some other strategies. Obviously, one that like pops up, which we've talked about before, is like playing decks that can like slow down a game, like stacks. I think that people have a stigma on stacks where it's like, oh well, you only play stacks cards in cEDH. Like you don't play them in like high power, and God forbid mid power. You're like deploying like a stacks card or two every single turn, and then you're trying to get to a point where you can be able to come out under those stacks before they do, and that can still be in high power. Is it as common? Not really.
The strategies that you build around in sort of like the 99 of the commander, if that makes sense. It's not specifically pertaining to the commander, are just going to be, regardless of what they are, unless they are, game winning, like Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, or something. But if you're kind of trying to do like a mill strategy or an aristocrat strategy, I think it has to be tied to your commander as sort of like an infinite mana outlet or something like that. Or, for instance, aristocrats, Ellis Ilkor, the one that Blake did on the Dominaria United, like that's an aristocrat strategy in the command zone. So it's going to be something you always have access to. You're able to build your deck in the 99 around that specific ability, and you don't have to fill your deck with all these other, Blood Artists / Zulaport Cutthroat effects, because you have access to it at all times in your command zone. So you can be able to put higher quality cards in your deck and maybe use something that's going to be more efficient towards that strategy to the commander than, let's say you're trying to put a mill package into a aristocrat strategy. You know what I mean? Like that's just not going to work out for you, especially in cEDH. But in high power, it very well could.
Yeah.
You need to be able to take advantage more of what your commander can do in the, like, as far as strategies are concerned that aren't quite there in cEDH, you need to be able to take advantage of it through your commander, since you always have access to it. If you don't always have access to it, it's going to be too slow for you to find the combo pieces, and, could always more than likely result in losses most of the time in cEDH.
I mean, I also think that really any strategy can be cEDH if the right card gets printed, right? Because, combat used to be like a complete joke, and now, like, so many commanders went through combat, whether it's, Winota, some of the stacks decks. You've even got Paco and Haldan, that's a control deck that actually can win through commander damage, even. Not even just combat damage, but commander damage. So I think really basically any strategy can be good. It just needs the right support, and it might not be there yet. But never write it off, because we never know what cards are coming, because any efficient win condition can potentially make any strategy good.
Yeah,
I agree with Blake.
That's true. That's one that I actually forgot about. The kind of like that, like Voltron like strategy. What were we talking about recently? Light pause.
Yeah,
light pause in that, but like it's funny because that's what's so like interesting about cEDH is that you have a meta, and then you want to break a meta. And right now, Chris and I were talking about how the meta right now is more of this like grindy mid-range style stuff, and like chipping in with like a giant creature because people want to like play their like value cards and like keep them there. They don't want to block Paco Haldan deck, and we played that the other night.
Shout out Taylor.
Yeah. Shout out Taylor if you're watching this. That was a good game. But yeah, it's like, when you're facing down this like 10-10 dog, and you're trying to like keep like mana dorks up so that you can just cast your spells, or you're like, I can probably win if I just find the right cards on my next turn. But then you go around to your next turn, and that deck plays a lot of like extra turns. Even if they were to have like, okay, well, I'm gonna do 2 extra turn spells, and my freaking Paco gets above commander damage, then you're basically dead if you don't block. So it's really interesting that some of those strategies that might not be good right now, like we were saying, could get support, but there could be just like this like silver bullet strategy that you can just like walk into cEDH and just be like, yeah, like, y'all gonna be playing these kind of strategies. This is what the meta looks like, and I'm gonna be doing this. There might be some strategies that people are like, oh, well, you're only doing this because it's like a meta buster. But like, who cares? You're trying to win. So that's really, yeah. You're trying to win. So,
I mean, that's true with any competitive format, right? You just because your deck's not meta, but if it's well positioned against the meta, you'll end up doing well. So there's also the conversation of, if you're going into an actual tournament, or if you're playing in a consistent pod, if you know what they're playing against, and you feel like you've got an off meta strategy, but that has a silver bullet against those strategies, that is one way to go.
Right. Precisely. I have one more topic here, and it is the card quality in your deck. Now, I think that like a lot of people think about card quality between high power and cEDH, but I'm gonna talk about the cEDH portion of this a little bit more in the beginning. But a lot of people think that like, okay, well, they're probably playing like the best cards in like every single color, right? and that's like that like it's like Staple City. You're playing like the best cards in blue, the best cards in red, or whatever, right? And then you open up like some people's lists, and then it's a lot of them probably do only have a bunch of like staples, and like, oh yeah, this is cEDH because these cards are objectively strong. I would say that that's probably like a big like misunderstanding, is that you can have a lot of really strong cards in a deck, but that doesn't make it cEDH, because they might not work with each other as well as you think. They might not have synergies with each other. You're playing objectively just really strong cards, but they're not pushing you to your game plan as fast as you can. A lot of like the top decks, for example, like your like 4-color like blue farm decks, or those even like Kinnan, stuff like that. Like you're playing like pretty much a lot of like some of the best cards in those colors, and some of those strategies call for that. But I think that like a lot of people have this misunderstanding that like, oh yeah, well, I go to like EDH Rec, and I see like the top X cards in blue, and that's probably all the cards that are going to be played in cEDH, and that's just not the case. You could have that for like high power, like you could have Staple City in high power, but when it comes to like cEDH, there's cards that you add to your deck that you would probably never really think from like just face value, be like, oh yeah, this card compared to like this card, there's no way that you can compare these two. But some of those cards might surprise you. Like I'll give y'all one of the examples that I was like, why would anybody want to play this, until I actually started looking into like cEDH. But Simian Spirit Guide by itself, it's like okay, well, this is a 3-mana 2/2 ape. You exile it from your hand, you add a red. And it's like objectively compare. Yeah. It's a great card. Let's say someone's deck, they were cutting like, I don't know if this is like a really good example, but they were like, okay, well, I need a card slot in my deck, but I'm thinking between like, I don't know, Smothering Tithe and this, for like cEDH. It's like, Smothering Tithe is, we talked about it before, but it's a crazy card. But in the right decks, it might not be as powerful as having that one red mana to be able to do the things that you want to do. And a lot of those cards that people will consider to be like, just like objectively crazy good, might not even show up in like cEDH. Like, I've seen a lot of people try to jam something like a Phyrexian Altar into like a lot of their decks. The card is objectively really good, but is it going to help you get to where you want to go in the right cEDH decks, when it's probably not needed, and you can play something that is a bit more efficient and can get you to where you want to go maybe faster? Or maybe you're not playing too much of just like straight up interaction, and you want to jam this Phyrexian Altar in there. It's like choices like that, as far as like card quality goes, that really changes how people make their decks in cEDH compared to like high power. Because like I said before, you could probably have a lot of these like objectively really good cards in high power, but then you only have 100 cards going into cEDH, just like high power. But you want to make sure that those 100 cards fit what you're trying to do the best you can. And a lot of those value cards that people play are getting cut for more efficient cards. So what do y'all think about like card quality between these two?
So I mean, again, cEDH is just going to be like any format, right? You're going to have staples. All your blue decks, there are only so many free counter spells in this game. I don't care what deck you're running, you're going to run the same suite of free counter spells. You're going to run the same suite of mana positive rocks, that sort of thing. But then once you get past those kind of like unmovable staples, there's less. I would even say there's potentially like less staples in cEDH, because I mean, look at some of you've got quite a few like strategies that are very niche, like Kark Sakashima, Tavern Scoundrel, Kark's Thumb. Those are cards you're not going to see in any deck unless you're very specifically built around those sort of strategies. So again, ultimately I think it's the same argument as any Magic deck, is you're going to have a certain set of staples that are just the most efficient and the most like powerful in their certain color combinations, and they're always going to show up because there's just nothing better. But then you also have to take into consideration your commander in the deck and what cards are actually synergistic that get you to that win. But again, there's no card that really can reproduce Thassa's Oracle, so you're always going to see that sort of staple for that sort of effect.
One of the biggest things I think is very relevant in this discussion is the mindset portion of it. You want to be able to think about like, okay, well, if I wanted to make a deck in high power, is the collection of cards that I have fit to stay within this, this realm where I'm not trying to like do the best stuff possible, and I can be able to kind of like assemble things and like have like value engines and not just try to like win out of nowhere or like stop people out of nowhere, those kinds of things. And then, when you're making cEDH, you basically just like have all of those thoughts. And then, when you want to go into like different pods or like different tables, I think it's important to be able to distinguish between these two. Last question before we end this podcast. What do y'all think that our decks are probably gonna fall in line more, I guess, with our content? It might be a good thing to try to find a good middle ground between the two, because I don't think a lot of people actually do that. I know that like casually competitive kind of had something going on, but a lot of the big cEDH channels, like, a lot of them just play like, just the meta stuff. So which would y'all like prefer between?
Also, I mean, to this point, I think you can take the stance that like a lot of modern pros take, is that basically in modern, it's always better to play the deck that you like and the deck that you like can pilot properly, because I can show up to a cEDH tournament with Blue Farm and I'm gonna immediately lose because I've never played the deck before. I don't know its in, its outs.
Yeah.
I'm not, there's a lot. cEDH is such a like is such a I'm hard to navigate format, because there's like a ton of like rules interactions and like how to two different like stacks pieces interact, if they're two people play the same stacks piece interact. I could like the whole I control the replacement effect, so I can decide which replacement effect it goes to. There's just a lot of like little niche interactions that you'll never get if you don't like really practice with the same deck over and over again. So I know like me myself, I'm going to stick to like a deck or two and then just want to be piloting outside of like our videos to where we build new commanders and try to, see what their impact on, Fringe or cEDH looks like.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I currently have two decks, being Paco and Haldan and Kark Sakashima, and those are going to be the two you'll see me play.
Yeah. I think in order to really stretch the notion of Fringe, you have to be able to test it against the top tier meta decks. If you're playing 4 Fringe decks, like you're just, it's not really going to be, it's not really, going to be gathering much from it, so to speak. But if a Fringe deck competes against a Blue Farm, Kinnan, and a Sisse, you better believe that it's probably got some Fringe, capabilities and stuff like that. So like, I mean, I personally, y'all know me. I'm a brewer at heart. I will be brewing as many decks as I want. But I think that my goal is always to try to compete at the top of the game. So as far as I'm concerned, my decks are going to be Fringe, but with the goal of being able to take down the titans of the cEDH. So
right, Fringe trying to whinge. I hear you. That's all. That's all that it is. Yeah. Just to recap, keep in mind, like the card quality, the strategies,
Speed.
the pacing when
Mhm.
you're, you know, when you're deciding, when you're deciding which avenue you want to take. Also, too, one of the biggest ones is you want to keep the social aspect in mind. This is big. I would say that, you know, when you go into like cEDH, none of that stuff really matters. But in high power, you can still fall into those things where you have to like rule zero some stuff. Maybe some people don't like certain strategies or whatever, you know what I mean? But you know, it's why cEDH is kind of
Less
nice.
so in high power. Like
Well,
high power
yeah,
still has a
yeah,
lot more
yeah.
is a lot more forgiving than like mid power. Mid power is where you see a lot of the I don't want to see this stuff and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
It just
it
depends.
really goes down.
Yeah, it
But
depends.
I thank y'all for watching this episode of the podcast. Once again, please subscribe to the channel. You know, like the video. We're gonna have all of our socials down in the description. If you have any questions about what we talked about, you know, please leave it in the comments below. We love to like talk about it with y'all. Um, I think that I'm not sure if we mentioned the Discord before. I think we did, but that's also going to
Mhm.
be in the description. That's probably the best way for y'all to be able to reach us. And yeah, do y'all have anything else? Sorry. You know, our Murders at Karloff Manor gameplay is going to be coming out very, very soon, and we hope y'all enjoy that as well. We're the Brothers War. We you know, we hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and we will see y'all next time.